Welcome back to the APG Talks podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Gray, and we are right at the beginning of a brand new season. We've rescheduled our program just a little bit, but I'm excited today to bring you the first episode in a brand new season. And right off the top, I want you to hear the title. This season, we are talking to the subject of soul tank management, keys to avoid burnout. I'm going to say that again because I really want that to sink in. Soul tank management, keys to avoid burnout. It's going to be a great season. You're going to get so much from it. It's going to be very powerful, very helpful, very transformative. And my goal is to give you some incredible insights and lessons to what soul tank management actually is. Things that enter our life via our body can go on to affect not just our body, but our spirit and our soul as well. And the likewise is true with the other prisms of our life, that we can have things enter through our life in our spirit or our soul and go on to affect every other part of our life. So we are interconnected, inter-affected beings. And this is why it's so important that when we're talking about growth and development and becoming the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be, and when you're talking to someone who claims to be an advisor or a coach or some kind of leader that's giving you advice and guidance, it's so crucial to understand the importance of holistic diagnosis and treatment. In other words, if you take a visit to your local doctor, one of the things they're going to do is they're going to try and understand what's going on in every part of your body, not just the site of pain or where you think most of the symptoms are happening. They're going to try and make a holistic diagnosis. Well, what is true for doctors in the physical realm is also true for us in the realm of our mind and our emotions and everything that's going on in our inner life. We have to have holistic diagnosis. We've got to take a look at every part of the person's life to understand what's actually going on here in the process of them becoming who they are. Holistic diagnosis. And then, of course, holistic treatment. You can't just deal with one aspect of a person's being and their experience. You actually have to take a holistic view based on body, soul, and spirit. One of the ways that I like to say it is this, is to go beyond treating the symptoms and heal the source. Again, if we use that analogy of visiting a doctor, somebody that is a medical practitioner because of pain or discomfort that you're experiencing, the best doctors are not just going to treat your symptoms and send you away as quickly as possible. No, they've been trained and they're going to try their best to find the source of the pain, the source of the problem, because they know that if the source can be found, then the treatment becomes more straightforward. So we don't want to have practitioners in our life that claim to be coaches or leaders or advisors who only treat symptoms. We need people who understand symptoms and they seek to heal the source. And this is where gift, skill, and experience collide. Gift and skill and experience. Let me focus on each of those words for a moment. Gift, in other words, I am making the inference, very, very strong inference actually, because I'm a big believer in this, that each person on the planet is born with giftings and abilities that are already built in, that are innate or instinctive to who they are. Their gift needs to be in the arena of being able to coach and advise and give wisdom and all of these things. They also need skill. In other words, you can't just trade off your natural gifts. We see that in the life of athletes when they fail to reach their potential. They don't understand the principle that just because they're talented and gifted doesn't mean that they don't need to train and work hard. You need gift, but you also need skill, which comes from development and learning and growing in context, those abilities that you believe you have. And then thirdly, experience. Somebody who's actually been doing what they claim to be good at for a lengthy enough period of time to show that they've got some results, that the advice they give, the wisdom they provide actually turns into good results for the recipient of that advice. And so we want to see the collision of gifting, skill, and experience. And the thing about it is, just because a person has a qualification or a certificate does not therefore mean that they're a capable practitioner. I'm going to say that again. Just because someone can show you their qualification or their certificate does not automatically mean that they are a capable and skillful practitioner. Certainly, there's nothing wrong with having qualifications and certifications. They are good things. However, if you don't have the collision of gift, skill, and experience, you're probably not going to get a great result. So let's continue with this idea of defining the word soul. Again, our soul is the combination of our mind, our will, and our emotions. Our mind, in other words, our thought life, our will, which is what we choose and the choices we make, and thirdly, our emotions, all of them, the good, the bad, the ugly, the confusing, all the rest of it. Our soul is the makeup of our mind, our will, and our emotions. Also, we need to understand that our soul is the primary prism through which we engage with life. Even our sense of worth, our sense of hope or our lack of a sense of hope, our expectations, our understanding of purpose, our reasoning, our everyday walking around normal life activity. We do all of those things through the primary prism of our soul. That is how we engage with the world around about us. Now, our soul is also the primary prism through which we navigate our journey of either remaining sustainable, which is what the goal of this season is. It's very much the broader goal of what I'm doing with all of the seasons and all of the coaching and all the advice and consulting and mentoring that I'm doing. That is the goal, is that people become long-term sustainable. And we have to understand that through our soul, that's the prism through which we navigate our own journey of either remaining sustainable or risking burnout. In other words, if you're going to experience burnout, it is going to affect every part of your life, but the place you're going to experience it predominantly, where you're going to feel the impact and the consequences of that experience, is mostly in your soul. And so we also need to understand that's in our soul where really high quality soul tank management takes place. So you're going to hear me use this word soul a lot throughout this season. It's very important that we understand the true definition, the useful definition of what this word means, how it applies to our daily life, and then also to put that into the context of how our soul is either positively affected through good soul tank management, and of course, the converse, how our soul gets affected when we do not practice good soul tank management and we run the risk of burnout. To me, as I observe and I have conversations with people in many different contexts and spheres, I am alarmed at how many people don't even have an elementary understanding of what soul tank management is. Some of them don't even know that they need to practice any kind of soul tank management. These are the kinds of people who are highly vulnerable to some kind of serious episode of having burnout in their soul at some point in the future. And my job and our goal together is to help as many people as possible to avoid that experience, because as I'm going to lay out in a moment's time, that experience is extremely challenging and can be very, very difficult to recover from. So this is a broad definition of what we mean when we use the word soul. Let's take a moment to talk about the word tank, because our title of this season is Soul Tank Management. What do I mean when I use the word tank? Well, essentially, when I'm using this word, it's a metaphor, and I want you to think of the fuel tank in a vehicle, perhaps the car you drive or the vehicle that you use at work. Tank is a metaphor for the fuel tank we have in our vehicles. The fuel in the tank represents the energy in our soul. The fuel in the tank in that vehicle is representative of the energy in our soul. And the inferences in this metaphor are really quite obvious. And that is, we need fuel in our tank if we want to go anywhere in life. When you set about your daily activities, whether it's doing the school run or driving to work or driving to the train station, going shopping, wherever you're going, without fuel in that tank, you're actually going nowhere. And what is true for the car is true in our lives, that without energy and resources in our soul, we too are not going very far at all, and we must understand this. There's a long list of things that use up the available fuel in our tank, a long list of things. Think of all the items that I mentioned a moment ago, how our soul engages, and it's the primary prism that we engage with our perspectives, our relationships, our work, our family. It's through our soul. And all of those items that I listed out for you, plus many more, they are all things that use up the available fuel in our tank. And so they all require our soul to be engaged. This is why when we're going about our daily business, we use resources in our soul, in our will, in our mind, and in our emotions. And just like the car, when it travels from A to B, you will end up at point B with less fuel than what you started at point A. Some of you are jumping ahead and saying, yeah, unless you stop at the fuel station. Well, we are going to get to that in this season without a shadow of a doubt, but stay with me for a moment if you can. I want you to really catch a picture of this and realize how important this truth is, that even just waking up and going through your day from wake up time through to sleep time, being awake literally requires energy resources to be burned in our soul. It's literally that straightforward and that practical and that real, just like the vehicle that requires resources or fuel or energy for every single trip, so too does our soul require energy for every activity that we are engaging with. Like the vehicle in our metaphor, there are different fuel economy rates that we operate at. Just like you can buy different vehicles today that have different economy rates, the same is true in our soul, that we function and we operate through our daily experience at different rates of economy. Sometimes we are burning more fuel, more resources. Sometimes we're able to conserve a little bit of fuel, a little bit of resource. And it's really important that we capture this understanding as well. There are some days, there are some activities, some situations, and even some people in our lives that require a higher than average rate of fuel burn. That's just the reality of the matter. When you face stressful situations, difficult people, high pressure moments, these are the activities in our life that do cause us to spend our soul fuel, our soul resources at a far higher rate than is sustainable, and we need to be aware of it. You see, some people are not aware of this at all. And the people who live unaware or ignorant by choice of these soul tank realities, they are the ones who are at more risk of experiencing a burnout episode. And I don't want you to be ignorant. I don't want you to deny the truth to yourself and just plow on as if it'll never happen to you. The fact is, every one of us is vulnerable if we don't play things smart. You don't want to have a burnout episode ever, but you certainly don't want to have one because you acted in ignorance of your own economy rate. You have to refuel yourself regularly. Without refueling, as is true with the vehicle you drive, you will eventually break down on the side of the road. Without refueling, you're going to conk out, as we say in Australia. You're going to run out of fuel and you're going to be stranded on the side of the road for who knows how long, because there's no getting around this reality that to travel from your point A to your point B on a regular basis, you have to be practicing good soul tank management. We're going to unpack that in more detail in future episodes in this season. In fact, some of the things that we're going to have coming up over the coming weeks that I want you to be aware of is we're going to talk about the fact that just stopping is not enough. Just stopping is not enough, and we're going to unpack that in a future episode. We're also going to talk about the skill of learning to refuel according to your unique wiring. You see, there are generic principles for refueling, but there are specific things that apply to you in a way that they don't apply to anybody else. And we're also going to talk about things like the orange light on the dashboard. And yes, I am talking about the metaphor of our vehicles again, when that dreaded orange light comes on. And as we know, most men see that orange light as a challenge. I know I do. We see the orange light and we think, wow, I wonder which petrol station I can stretch this car trip to. Gives everybody else stress and it doesn't really achieve anything. But this is a metaphor again for our soul, that the orange light, there are warning signs on the dashboard of our life that are trying to tell us that there are certain indicators not in our favor. And if we keep ignoring them, we're going to pay a hefty price. Let's get to defining this third word, and the word is management. We've talked about soul. We've talked about tank. Let's talk about management for a moment or two. Soul tank management is all about having the understanding and the skill to recognize the factors that contribute to burnout and how to avoid it. It's the skillful art of pursuing inner life health and sustainability as a high priority in life. I mentioned a moment ago that there are so many people who live completely oblivious to these realities and these transformative truths. Once you find out, once you discover the importance of these principles, it's incumbent on you to live in such a way that pays respect to prioritizing soul tank management in a healthy way in your life so that you can go the distance, make it through to the end of your journey in life in a healthy and successful way, not experiencing burnout or even multiple burnout episodes along the way. And one of the ways that we achieve this outcome is by prioritizing this practice in our life, not being ignorant, not living in denial, but learning about it, getting it under our belt or in our toolkit, as it were, and then beginning to practice it in a healthy, continued way. You see, so many people ignore the importance of this principle to their own detriment. People will elevate all kinds of other life goals ahead of this one, only to end up frazzled, unhappy, and lonely in life. How about this idea? We are constantly bombarded by these pseudo gurus, as I would call them, telling us to work, work, work. That's all they preach. Work hard, work hard, work hard, work hard. I have no problem with working hard. However, when the only tool that you have in your toolkit is a hammer, you're going to see everything in life as a nail. And that's what some of these guys are doing when they're constantly preaching at us to work, work, work as much as we possibly can, as if it was some kind of religion. Some of them will even chant at you that if you want to succeed and get anywhere in life, you even have to go as far as giving up friendships and family for years on end. And they go ahead and they sculpt these worthless trophies for themselves as if they live their own life this way. Work, 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 as if it were a mantra to live by. However, I would say, what's the point of living that way and one day finally arriving at this destination called success, according to someone else's definition, only to discover that the true you is not even there with you? You left your true self in your past to ascend this mountain of ambition, and then when your hollow shell of a human being crests the peak, there's nobody there to enjoy it with you because you had to sacrifice those relationships in your younger days. It sounds like a crazy idea to me. In fact, I would say that this is some of the worst advice we constantly hear preached by others who claim to be sage guides. Whether it's on your social media feed, or it's at a conference that you went to, or it's in your workplace, or a friend of a friend, when you hear this rhetoric of work, 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 and nothing else, I want you to steer clear. It's not good advice, and it will do you damage. My goal is to encourage you to go another way, to take a different path. Really, the truth is you don't have to burn yourself out to achieve enjoyment and success in life. There is a far better way of going about it. And if you stay connected to this whole season, I'm going to show you how. I don't want you to become another one of those statistics who followed that hollow advice from the pseudo gurus telling you to sacrifice everything in the name of your work and your ambitions, and then end up lonely, hollow, and on your own because you actually traded away the things that matter most in pursuit of adopting somebody else's vision for life. Let's get to defining this last word in today's introductory episode. It's the word burnout. This is the one that none of us really want to face up to, but if we face up to it and we learn about it and we put some skill in our toolkit, we can find ourselves avoiding some of the potholes that others go into on a regular basis. We can live more healthy, and we can then train others that we care about to follow suit and do the same. Let's talk about a definition for the word burnout. And the fact of the matter is, my viewers and listeners with this season and this episode, if you've been there or even close to burnout, then you know in a very intimate and personal way how ugly and scary and debilitating a burnout episode can actually be. I would even say, and happy to confess that in my own life, I've been so close on several occasions. Now, don't get me wrong, I do try to practice everything that I'll be teaching you during the coming weeks. However, sometimes the seasons of our life throw some tough stuff in our direction and it can overwhelm us. Just this past week in my weekly newsletter called Monday Muse, which I urge you and encourage you to subscribe to. You can do that in the links below if you're watching this on YouTube. It's also in the podcast website show notes if you need to find that link. In this past week's edition of my newsletter, I wrote about the seasons of life and how we can navigate those seasons, including some of the tough ones that come our way. And no matter how robust we are and how good our practices are, sometimes life throws some really tough stuff at us. And I've been through those experiences too. So I don't want you to feel like you're alone or you're listening to someone who doesn't know by experience what they're talking about when we talk about burnout episodes and being close. In fact, I can remember several years back being so exhausted and so depleted from 7 to 10 years of extremely high pressure work situation, lots of strain around me, lots of load on my shoulders to get very important results achieved. And throughout that period of time, I tried my best to practice sustainability rhythms and to do the things that I'm talking about in this season. However, over a long enough period of time, even with practicing those rhythms, the tiredness and the exhaustion and everything still caught up to me and caught me off guard when I wasn't really at my best. And I'll never forget being in one of those little mini moments in my life where I was so depleted and so close to the edge. I remember going in the middle of my workday to the local town center near where I work and where I live. And I remember standing next to my car trying to make up my mind about a very simple decision. I was just standing there trying to decide what lunch I would collect before I went back to the office. Now, those who know me and those who even don't know me and can probably guess, making small decisions has never been a challenge for me. In fact, I've been capable of making really, really crucial decisions without a huge amount of time on my side. And here I was in the local main street, standing at my car, completely incapacitated as I tried to deal with the seriously tiny decision of, will I buy sushi? Will I buy Subway for lunch? And I literally got so depleted in my soul tank that actually I was tipping over the edge into panic attacks and anxiety attacks because of my state of depletion. And basically what happened that day is I stood paralyzed next to my car for nearly 15 minutes trying to make a decision about lunch, to the point where my heartbeat started racing so fast and I physically began to quiver. And in the end, I gave up on the choice, got in my car, drove straight home, crawled into bed, and began to text a few of my most trusted colleagues and let them know that I was not in a good state and I needed to immediately do something about getting some fuel back in my tank. The point of my story, as much as anything else, is to reveal how this kind of stuff can happen to anybody. Nobody is completely immune, and we need to do our best to learn how to practice soul tank management and keep it functioning as often as we possibly can. You see, a burnout experience, or even coming close to one, is a lonely and dark place to be. Viewers and listeners who've been there before and who have experienced are nodding their heads and maybe even talking back to me right now, because they know what I'm talking about when I describe the loneliness and the sense of darkness that seems to envelop you when you get into one of these phases, one of these patches in your life. It's not a nice experience at all. You find yourself having no energy, no willpower, no hope, not even any will to fight. It's horrible. And some of you have been there. Some of you are quite nervous that you're getting close to going there. Others are a little bit oblivious. Whatever stage or state you're in, everything in this season is useful for you to apply. The recovery period, if you go through an episode like this, can be really long, really complicated, and quite painful. And not just for you, but for the loved ones around about you as well. And that's why we will always say that prevention is definitely better than cure. Avoiding these potholes is better than becoming an expert at how to get out of them. And that's the whole point of this entire season that we're focusing on right now. A burnout episode, or even coming close to it, is often the precursor or the gateway, if we want to use that word, to serious mental health difficulties. What starts out as a feeling of being depleted and flat can quickly turn to hopelessness, isolation, forming unhealthy habits, poor decision making, and a raft of other destructive consequences. People in this situation are seriously at risk of sliding into serious depression and anxiety, and potentially even further along the mental health spectrum. And at that point, the truth is that recovery becomes very challenging, to say the least. This is a really important point for us to understand. As I said, regardless of where you are at in relationship to these principles and these truths, this, what I'm about to say, is a super important point to recognize and accept. And that is, it often starts with depletion, also known as an empty tank. Some of these problems that we're identifying, these challenges that people go through on a daily basis, people sitting next to you on the train, people in your office, people in your workspace, people that you pass on the school pickup run, at the shops, everywhere, people are struggling with these issues. And often their challenge begins with depletion. Their soul tank is empty. Their resources are burned. The fuel is gone. The orange light is on, and they don't know how or if they'll ever get the opportunity to learn how to refuel, or even if they know how, to have the time and the space to do that refueling. It starts with an empty tank. One of the things that I like to talk about with my mentoring clients that I've worked with over a period of years is that when we catch up and we have our regular conversations and our mentoring sessions, I will very often ask them to score themselves on a simple 0 to 10 score line. And then I always repeat to them and I explain what each of those score ranges mean. And I start out by saying it in this way. I say, I want you to assess your soul tank particularly, assess your energy levels and your sense of hope about the future and just the general tone of how your life feels at the moment. And I ask them to give themselves a score. And I say, as a guideline, I say 10 out of 10 means that you are so high on life, you cannot wait for the sun to rise in the eastern sky tomorrow so you can get at it again. And then I give them a caution. Please don't tell me you're a 10 out of 10, because either you're lying or you should be hosting this session and not me. Hardly anybody is ever a 10. You can experience 10 for small snippets in time. On your wedding day, when a child is born, maybe when your sporting team wins the premiership, when your own team wins the grand final. There are a few little highlight moments that may give you a temporary 10, but nobody really lives at a constant state of 10. It's not reality. But I give people this guide, and then I say to them that a 0 means that you actually are so cooked, you cannot even get out of bed. You feel like it's over. There's no energy, there's no hope, there's no resources. You cannot face another thing in another day, and you feel like you're at the end. People who get there, and they do get there, that is a frightening place to get to. And I will always say to the people I work with, if you're scoring yourself anywhere from 0 to 3, you need immediate intervention, immediate and serious intervention, so that things don't get frighteningly worse. On our previous point, in our previous score, when I give people the guideline of the 10, I say to them, if you're somewhere between a 7 and a 9, that's fantastic. We love that. 7, 8, or 9 is amazing if you can be in that location and that position. But even when they score themselves well and they're telling the truth, I still urge them to explore, well, why are you a 7, 8, or 9? Let's learn what is helping you so that we can keep it going. And the third score range that I talk to people about is, I say, if you're about a 5 out of 10, that probably means that you can get out of bed and face the day. However, if one more thing goes wrong, you might just lose it. People who are living in the zone of 4, 5, or 6 are vulnerable to sliding in a hurry. And what I've discovered is that when you get that compounding effect of bad moment, bad experience, bad relationship, bad situation, and your score starts dropping from 7 to 6 to 5 to 4, etc., the velocity increases exponentially. In other words, the slide from a 9 to a 7 is nowhere near as fast as the slide from a 6 to a 3 or 4. We have to be wise and on guard for this stuff that gets at us and really has the power to either trip us over and make life's journey even harder, or if we play it smart, we learn these principles, learn how to apply them, take on board sage advice and wisdom that's proven and skillful, we can actually set ourselves up for a far more successful and healthy future. Now, maybe you're not in this moment right now. Maybe it's not for you. However, you could be in need of these principles in the future, or somebody that you care about could be in need of these principles right now or in their future. And again, prevention is always better than cure. And so I really want us to understand that as we go through this season, as we get into the coming weeks and we talk about lessons and practical tips to understand soul tank management and how you do it and how you avoid burnout. And my goal is you come out of the end of this season seriously empowered to do better on this very important principle. I want you to understand that there is hope to make change. It actually doesn't take too much effort to start the momentum turning in the other direction, where this stops being a loss for you and starts to become an arena of victory in your life. So there is hope for making change and setting new routines and growing awareness and all of these things. And so, as I touched on a few moments back, there's going to be many lessons, many practical tips that we're going to outline throughout this season. What I'd love you to do sometime at the completion of this particular episode, and hopefully before we get into next week and episode 2 in this season, I'd love you to utilize a tool that I've developed for people that applies specifically to this season. I've developed a tool called a burnout prevention test. And basically this simple test, which you can do online at my website, and I'll give you that link in just a moment, and I'll also put it in the show notes and in the description below. The burnout prevention test will give you an opportunity to self-assess your own score, scored against benchmarks of thousands of people, to understand how serious is your risk. Now, I want to urge you, when you take the test, please don't try to impress yourself by giving answers that you think are the best ones, which might get you the best scores. That's a waste of the tool. Honesty and truth about your reality is going to give you the best results and the best insights, so that you can find out not only what is my general risk of burnout, but what specific areas of my life are potentially being revealed as areas where the struggle could begin. Remembering, we talked about it earlier today, that we want to have holistic assessment so that we can have holistic treatment. And so this burnout prevention test will help you to do that. You can find the link at my website, www.apgelite.com.au/burnout-test. That's a lot to remember. Don't worry about trying to remember it. It's in the show notes. It's in the description below, and you can click on that link. It'll take you straight to the test, and it's so simple. It'll take you 3 minutes. When you do the test, you'll get a personalized report with insights about what it means for you, and it's free. So why would you not take the test and find out where you're positioned and do something about gauging where you're at with soul tank management and getting on the road to becoming a soul tank management master, if there is such a thing. There is, everyone listening and watching this season. So episode 2, we're going to be diving right into lessons and practical tips. I would urge you, try not to miss a single episode, whether you're watching or listening or doing a bit of both. Try not to miss a single episode. It literally will have the power to be life-changing and, who knows, even life-saving. I don't want to be too simplistic when I say that. I don't want to be over-dramatic. I just want to be truthful. There are people out there, and you know some of them, and we've heard about many of them. There are people who are contemplating the fact that they think their best option might be just to end their life. Well, actually, some of these tools and some of these principles actually do have the power to start a person's turnaround and get them on the road that is prosperous and healthy and stable, instead of the road and pathway that they could be on. So please don't miss a single episode. It literally will be transformative and life-changing. Also, don't just like it. If you do like it, please share it. If you enjoy the content, pass it on to a friend, pass it on to somebody else who you think might be helped and might enjoy it. And I know that this season is going to be helpful for so many people. I really do hope you'll join me in episode 2 next week. Until then, bye for now.